So warm welcome if you just joined us there. I'm Michael. I'm going to be the host for today's session. We're looking at customer receipts. And obviously what we're looking at in customer receipts, that can be applied to the supplier payment side as well. So we're looking at customer receipts in Sage 50. So I'll be doing the talking and the demos, and we've got Abby in the background who'll be on hand to answer any questions that you might have as well. So we'll keep them busy. Right, this is what we're going to be covering, so quite a short agenda for this quick learn session. So a little bit of background to the customer receipts window. We're then going to run through a series of demonstrations, so looking at customer receipts. Also, we'll pick up on payments on account as well, so recording deposits within your software. And also, one of the tasks to almost like tidy up your system, which a lot of people miss out on, or it's probably one of those more common support queries as well. Why can't I do this, or why aren't transactions clearing from the audit trail? And it's because they're flagged as outstanding. So tidying up your system, matching transactions together, or allocating them, as we would refer to it as. We're going to cover that as well. Just at the end of the session, obviously we'll open up to questions, but just explain a little bit more about the additional support that's available to you. Right, let's get stuck in then. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background. So customer receipts is a quick and easy way to record receipts and payments against invoices in your software. And obviously we're going to run through that screen and explain the various options that you've got available to you. You can use it to record payments on account, or what you probably more likely what you'd refer to as a deposit, either coming in against a customer or a deposit that you're making against the supplier. Now, there's 4 transaction types that I'll quickly mention. Obviously, for customers, you're going to see SR and SA transactions, so a sales receipt or a sales payment on account. And for a supplier, looking at the activity, you would see a PP, purchase payment, or a PA, so again, a purchase payment on account. Now, if you're doing a supplier payment or a payment on account, you can generate a remittance, which you can then email or print. And we do have a recorded webinar specifically on remittances if that's something that you are interested in. So do check that out. Let's get stuck straight into some demonstrations then. So I'll share my screen and we'll run through those 3 key areas: the customer receipt, posting a payment on account, and also the allocation process as well. Now, to access customer receipts, you can do that in a number of quite a few different ways within your software. So the obvious one, and if you've used Sage a long time, you're probably still likely to go into bank accounts, and you've got the customer receipts option on your toolbar at the top. Now, for the supplier side, if you're a bit like myself, I've got quite a low screen resolution set today. So to access the supplier payment option, you may have a grouped icon. You would just click on the drop down and you would have the supplier payment option in there. But it's specifically customer receipts we're going to concentrate on today. To access it, you can also go into the customers area, and within there, you will also have the customer receipt option. And you can also post customer receipts in a few other areas as well. So when you're entering a batch invoice, for instance, you can actually enter the receipt at the time of entering a batch invoice. So just by filling in the extra details. So if you've been paid or in part paid at the time of invoicing the customer, you can record it at the same time as the invoice. You can also do that within the invoicing and credits area. So when you're entering a new invoice, you've got your payment tab. And again, you can record information at the top there. You can choose how you want that to be recorded in your accounts. Do you want to post it as a payment on account, which will post it there and then? Or do you want to allocate it to the payment to the actual invoice, which means it will hold back that the payment until the invoice is actually updated to the ledgers? So a few different ways, but I just want to concentrate on the main customer receipt window in today's session. So I'm going to access it via the bank accounts area. I've got my bank account selected and just going to pop into customer receipt. Now the bank I have selected is listed top left. Obviously if I needed to, I can change that, but I'll just leave it set as my current account. Shows me the name of the account and also what the balance is on the account at this point in time. Next, we want to go on to the account itself, so filling in the customer details. Now, accessing the drop down, we've now got the new, what you term the quick search option. So if you're on version 29, you will have this option available to you on just about every drop down. And it means that rather than scrolling up and down trying to find them, you could type something in and select them from the list, just to narrow it down a little bit quicker. Now, I'm going to use this account today where I've got some transactions I've sort of prepared. I want to select that account. What it will do, it will list any outstanding transactions for me. So you can see what's, in this case, I've got the four transactions. So I've got 4 invoices in this instance. So I've got all generally all of the transaction information that I need. Now we'll come back to that list of transactions in just a moment. Pop in your date. Now, it should pick up today's date by default. If you're finding yours picks up an older date, it's probably just that you haven't closed Sage. So your Sage will only pick up the date initially when you first open the software. So it will pick up your current PC date. So as long as you're closing it at night and then coming in the next day, then that will be fine. It'll pick up today's date. You can obviously override that as well if you need to. You've got your reference. Now that is just a text field, the reference. So if you've got a one, it might be check number, it might be person's initials, it might be some sort of receipt number that you know, if you handwrite a receipt, for instance, you might have a receipt number that you type in there. You might just put something like online if they've paid you online, or card payment. Entirely up to you what you put in there. You've also got the ability to record an extra reference as well. So again, similar to the reference field itself, it's alphanumeric. Next, we can key in the amount, so the amount that you've received, or if you're making a supplier payment, the amount that you're actually paying. Now, if you just leave it set to 0 and you go start paying off invoices, that will just tot up as you go through that process. So as I start filling out that receipt column, the amount that I'm actually receiving, it will start to add that up automatically for me. If I want this sort of almost just that safety net, I can key it in advance. So you know, if I've got 2 items there, so 120, 120. If I want to make sure that, you know, I don't go above that, if I keyed in that amount at the top, 240, it would then start giving me a message otherwise. So I'm just going to leave it blank. I think it's just more of a habit thing than anything. We then come on to the list of transactions themselves. So first of all, we've got the show option. So what is it we want to show on this list? Now, you'll probably find that, and I don't think I've ever come across anyone actually changing this one. Most people will just have it set to all and probably just leave it as that as well. I suppose it would depend how many transactions you've got outstanding, but you can choose based on due date. It'll sort of only list those that are due at this point. You can put in a date range as well if you want. Obviously, if you select the date range, it will prompt you to specify that. The other option we've got is this option here, list invoice credit by item line. Now, by default, this will be ticked. So what it means is that all the invoices, the individual items, will be listed individually. So if you've got an invoice which has got multiple items on it, for instance, it will list them all separately. If I take the tick out of that one, you'll see that it now collapses. So the example in this case, invoice number 2, it's actually got two line items outstanding against it. So with it ticked, I see the individual item lines, which is great if you've got things like, maybe you've got a certain item that's being disputed, for instance. So you can leave it ticked and you can choose which of the item lines they are paying off. If you're not that bothered, then you could take the tick out. And obviously some invoices, they can have, you know, 10, 20, 50 lines, possibly even more. So it might just be easier to say, right, well, they're paying X amount of this invoice off, or this invoice in full. So rather than me go through and say, well, I want to pay that line in full, that one, and go through the 50 items on an invoice, if I've got that unticked, it means I've only got the one line, which is going to show me the total outstanding value that's I can show an amount received against. So I'll just go back to the default view. All I really need to do at this point is start completing that receipt column. Now in the receipt column, all I need to do is pop in the amount that is actually I've received against that particular invoice item. So in this case, we can see there's £120 outstanding. And if that was being paid in full, I can just type in £120. If it's being part paid, we would just key in the appropriate amount. So let's say £75 of that particular item was being paid. So we can see we got 195 in total at this stage. Other option, if an item is being paid in full, you can either just click the option at the top, pay in full, or you can just press F3 on your keyboard. So if this item is being paid in full and I press F3 on the keyboard, you can see it puts in automatically into the receipt column an automated full amount. Now let's say I'm just going to clear this for a moment, so I'm not going to save anything just yet, and we'll call up that account again. Not that one. Just scroll down and I'll select that account again. Now let's say I'm not bothered about which items are being paid off. So let's say I've filled in the amount at the top here. I've received £240, and rather than go down the receipt column saying pay in full or typing in values, what I can also do is I can use the automatic option. Now the automatic option will pay off the transactions based on the order that they are listed. So some people will say that's chronological order. It doesn't necessarily pay off the transactions in date order unless you've got them sorted by that. It will pay off as per whatever order they are listed in. So if I've got £240 and I click automatic, what it will do, you can see it fills in that receipt column for me. So it's got enough in the receipt, 240, to pay off the full item. It will then go on to the next item. Is there enough to pay that one off? In this case, yes, it can pay it in full. And it would continue doing that all the way down that list of outstanding transactions until, of course, it uses that full amount. So it's a nice quick way, rather than you go down that receipt column choosing individual items. Wizard option is there at the top as well, just to try and guide you through. So if you want guiding through step by step, the wizard's going to say, right, which bank account, which customer, right, which invoices are you paying, how much have you received, what's the reference. So it's going to try and guide you through that process step by step. But once you've done it a couple of times, you'll probably find that you fill this in, no problem at all. Right, just going to save that. And if I call up that account again, so is that one, you'll see again what it does this time. It lists only the outstanding items. So those first two are now flagged as having been paid. So nice and simple to record your receipts. Just a case of going in, as I mentioned, filling in the information at the top. Doesn't matter too much about the amount. That's an optional field. It will add that up as you go. And you just need to fill in that receipt column. Now, if you're in a position where you select an account, so we'll choose this one, and you can see on this one, there's nothing outstanding. So what I want to do this time is I want to record a deposit. So I want to record the fact that customers actually paid me in advance of me actually raising the invoice. So let's say they've paid me £100. I want to record that. So all I would do, I've filled in the information, I've got the right bank, I've got the customer, I'll just use today's date, and I'll put deposit as the reference. Again, it's just a text-based field, so you can put whatever you want. Same for the X reference. And all I need to do this time is pop in the amount. So they've paid me £100. There's nothing here that I can match that against. And all I would do is I would click save at that point. So I get a message, there's an unallocated payment balance of £100. Do you want to post this as a payment on account? So I just click yes, screen disappears, and that's it done. So nice and easy to record those as well. Just as easy, obviously, on the supplier side of the software. Now the trick with Things like payments on account, this catches a lot of people out. So if I just go into my account here, we can see we've got this account that I've just posted that deposit against. It's got £100 there. So at some point, I'll be entering an invoice. So let's say I've now entered the invoice, and I'll quickly do that against that account. So I'll just do a batch invoice just to save a little bit of time. So services, we'll pop an amount in. So I'll say it's £100, and I'm going to say it's £100 in total. So I've keyed in £100 net, and I'm just going to click calculate net outlet. So we click calculate net. And obviously from that, it will work out the net and the VAT breakdown for me. And I'm just going to save that. Now at this stage, you can see the account is showing as 0. If I have a look at the activity, you can see we've got the payment on account, this top transaction, and you can see we've got the invoice that we've now just entered as well. Both are showing as outstanding. Now, if I was to do a statement with outstanding transactions only, that account would be picked up because it's got outstanding transactions. If I was to run a debtors report, age debtors report, it would show this account because it's got outstanding transactions. So to tidy that up, we just want to allocate them together. Now that's something that catches a lot of people out. And all you need to do, nice simple task, and this goes for allocating credit notes to invoices as well for that matter. So to do it, we just got to go back to the customer receipt window, choose the bank account. I'll choose that customer. It will list the outstanding transactions. So we got the payment on account, the SA transaction, and the SI transaction, sales invoice. Both are outstanding. Both are for the same value as well. Now, all I want to do is pop in the date. So you're going to choose the most recent date of the two, which just so happens in this example, it's the same date. So I'll just leave it as today's date. I don't need to pop anything in the reference or the X reference or the amount. Leave the amount set to 0. Now, what I always recommend at this stage is when you come down to the receipt column, always start with essentially the credit transaction. So in this case, the payment on account, or if it was a credit note, start with that one. Click against it, and then we're just going to click pay in full at the top. Now, I could have just keyed in the value, but I've just clicked pay in full. I want to allocate all of this payment on account against some outstanding invoices. Right, now to do that, all I'm going to do is, you can see at this stage, I've got minus £100 at the top, and I want to allocate that 100 against this invoice. So I just click against the invoice. Again, what I'll do is I'll click pay in full. Now, if the deposit was for a lower value than the invoice, what I would do is I would pay in full the payment on account, the full 100, and then against the invoice, because I was only then part paying it, I would type in the value of the payment on account. Now, it might be that deposits, you need to pay off a number of different invoices with it. But it's a straightforward match in this case. So it's £100 against each of the transactions. The amount should be 0 at the top. Your analysis total just above the close button on the bottom right, that should be 0. And all I want to do at that point is click save. Now, if I call up that account again, so I said 2 in my case, you can see there's nothing outstanding. So we've matched them together at that point. That's one of those steps that a lot of people forget to do. And that's how you can tidy up your customers and your suppliers if you've got payments on account or credit notes on there. So again, nice and easy. Now that brings us to the end of the demonstration of customer receipts. Does anyone have any questions on it? I'm going to start picking those up in just a moment. But I want to quickly mention some other options to maybe think about in relation to customer receipts. So one, to help you get paid statistically, to help you get paid just that little bit quicker and easier as well, make sure you get your bank details on your invoices. Your customers can pay you online then. Saves them ringing up. Might be something that is a glaring omission from your invoices. But there are other options as well. If you maybe you haven't come across some of these, there's a PO, formerly Sage Pay. So, excuse me. So it's a way of, if you email out your invoices, you can include a pay now button on your invoices. Your customers can click that and pay you online. Similar option with invoice payments. So if you can integrate with Stripe or PayPal. You can include that pay now button on your invoices, get paid online. That automatically downloads that information into your accounts. If you've got that closer relationship with your customers and the repeat customers, you may choose to get paid by direct debit. So we do offer that service as well. A new one is invoice finance. So in partnership with Stargo, you can raise finance against outstanding invoices. And then, of course, you've got salary and supplier payments. So again, that's another option that you might consider on the payment of supplier side of the software. If you need to find out more information about most of these options, just on your toolbar within your software, towards the upper left, you'll have an apps and add-ons option. It'll give you more information about these features should you want to find more information about them. Right, okay, so questions. We're going to open up to those questions in just a moment. I'll maybe try and pick some of them myself as well in just a second if you've got any. So pop them into the questions panel. Just to quickly mention that we've got other sessions coming up over the next few weeks as well. So next week we're going to be covering customer refunds as part of the Quick Learn series. Following week we'll be covering batch supplier payment, and then in 3 weeks' time we're going to be covering bank payments and bank receipts. So if you're interested in signing up for any of those, watch out for your follow-up email, which you'll receive in around about an hour's time, and it will include a link. Other webinars, the longer, more sort of 45-minute ones where we go a bit more in depth into a product area. We've got loads of sessions coming up relating to the stock area, but again, do check that out. Links included. You'll have that in around about an hour's time. Right, so any questions, please pop them in there. Jane, your question there. Jane's got a question just about allocating transactions. So Jane, your query will relate to being on cash accounting. So cash accounting, you've got to match like with like. So by that, when you enter let's say a payment on account, which is going to relate to your question, when you post a payment on account on cash accounting, let me just see if I can demonstrate this one. So I'll just quickly share my screen again, and I should have a company set up on cash accounting. Oh, as if by magic, there we go. So in here would happen, we've got 0 transactions. So when you post a customer receipt and you're on cash accounting, there is one subtle difference. So let's quickly enter one. And when I go to save it, it will ask me what tax code I want to use for that one. So when you come to enter an invoice, obviously it will have a tax code associated with it. So you've got to use essentially, got to have matching tax codes. So you've got to pay off and allocate like with like. On cash accounting, when you enter a normal receipt, the tax code of that receipt is determined by the invoice that you're paying off. So if you were to have an invoice, let's say £100, £20 VAT, T1 tax code, when you pay that off, the receipt will automatically pick up T1. If you've got an invoice which, let's say, you enter that as, let's say, an exempt transaction, so T2, when you come to pay that one off, that T2 tax code would automatically be allocated to the actual receipt itself. That's where it would pick that up, so that you're accounting for VAT correctly on your VAT return under the cash accounting rules. So you've got to match like for like. Now, what it can mean is that if you're not in that position and maybe you haven't got the right tax code specified against the receipt, it can mean maybe having to delete the receipt and re-enter it with the correct tax code. But there can be a number, I suppose to a certain extent, it will depend on your scenario. Is it something you've just done? Is it something that's now, because of what you've done, it has now been VAT reconciled? So the scenario that you're in, it can make a big difference. So if you're in any doubt and you're struggling with that, do get in touch with our support team and they'll be able to guide you through that. Right, Ken, you were just asking about, can you quickly explain the options for payment on an invoice or not a batch invoice? I'll quickly see if I can quickly run through that one for you. I'll just switch back to my other company. So I've got a bit more information in that one. There we go. So if I go into invoices and credits this time and choose a new invoice, and I'll quickly maximize that as well to get rid of the background distraction. And I just go to specify this one here. So I'll choose one item. So we've got £21.60 in total. So the payment information is on this payment tab. You've got a similar option as well if anyone has a if anyone uses the sales order processing area. So what we've got is if we've received a deposit at this point, or maybe even payment in full at this time, what we can do is we can just say, I'll just say payment as an example. I'll choose the bank account, choose the payment amount. Now let's say that was just a part payment. So let's say they paid £10 of that one at that point. So you can see the amount that was due, £21.60. And I've got some options here. So I can say, right, actually the payment's already been received. This is used so I can show a reduced amount on the invoice. It doesn't post an additional transaction. This one will post as a payment on account. So as soon as I save this invoice, it will post that payment on account there and then. And this one, if I choose that final option, that allocate payment to invoice, and I save it, I'll just continue with that one. Yes to that one. I'll ignore all of the on hold statuses, etc. Just okay that. Saves the invoice. And what it will actually do, it should post a transaction for me. So if I go back to invoices and credits, just as an example, I've got that. Where's the invoice I've just entered? It is the 9th today. So I'll select that one and I'll update that to the ledgers at that point. Preview it, and as you can see, it's done both an invoice at that point and a receipt. If I had selected that payment on account option, as soon as I save that invoice, it would have updated that one and posted it as a transaction there and then. So in this case, we've got the invoice and the receipt posted at the same time. Hope that makes sense there for you, Ken. Right, okay. Just quickly pop back to the slides. So that brings us to the end of today's demo. Hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful, giving you a little bit of an insight into the customer receipt window. There is a great article within the Help Center if anyone needs it. Just search for the customer receipt window. Should be nice and easy to find. If you're in version 29 and you're in the customer receipt window, you've always got the help option in the top right, and that will guide you through that process. There'll be a short exit survey pop-up as you leave today. So if you could take a minute just to pop a few comments on there, that'd be greatly appreciated. We love reading those comments just to see if we're hitting the mark or not. And if you've got any ideas, maybe options you'd like to see covered going forward, if you can include that as well. Follow-up email should be with you in around about an hour's time. So it's got the links so you can watch or register for additional webinars or watch future recordings. On that note, we'll say goodbye. So take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you again. Many thanks.